Throughout history, governments around the world have worked tirelessly to maintain order, control narratives, and protect national security. But sometimes, that protection comes at a price. Hidden in the shadows of classified documents, buried beneath redacted reports, and whispered in the corners of conspiracy forums, are stories that challenge what we know or what we've been told. From vanishing islands and secret experiments to mysterious creatures and otherworldly objects, this is a journey through the dark corridors of history where secrets lie waiting to be uncovered. Tonight, we count down 10 strange things that were covered up by the government, incidents so bizarre, so controversial, that even decades later, they remain shrouded in silence. Welcome to the unknown. 1. The Philadelphia Experiment, a ship, a warp, a disappearing act. It was the summer of 1943. The Second World War was raging, and the United States was pushing the boundaries of science to win the upper hand. At the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, an ordinary-looking destroyer escort, the USS Eldridge, was about to become part of something extraordinary. According to declassified naval documents, the Eldridge was involved in routine experiments with degaussing, an attempt to make ships undetectable to magnetic mines. But the story that emerged years later paints a far more chilling picture. In 1955, a man named Carl Allen, who claimed to be a merchant marine, sent a series of letters to UFO researcher Morris K. Jessup. His claim? That the USS Eldridge had been rendered completely invisible, not just to radar, but to the naked eye. And even more disturbingly, that it had teleported. Allen wrote of a horrific experiment, of green fog enveloping the ship, and of men screaming, some fused to the bulkhead, others driven insane. Some accounts even describe the ship vanishing from Philadelphia and briefly reappearing in Norfolk, Virginia, over 200 miles away. The Navy officially denied the experiment ever took place. They insisted the story was a fabrication, born from a misunderstanding of scientific tests, but oddities remain. Crew logs were oddly missing. The movements of the Eldridge during that time are suspiciously vague, and multiple witnesses have come forward over the decades with eerily similar recollections. Was it a case of mass hallucination? Or did the U.S. military truly conduct a test of teleportation, one that went catastrophically wrong? Many believe it was an early test of unified field theory, Einstein's elusive idea of combining gravity and electromagnetism. Some even suggest Nikola Tesla's research was secretly involved. Whatever the truth, if the experiment did occur, it was buried swiftly and deeply. To this day, the U.S. government maintains that nothing unusual happened on the USS Eldridge, but the whispers continue, and so do the questions. 2. Operation Northwoods, the plan to attack America from within. In the early 1960s, the world stood at the edge of a knife. The Cold War wasn't just a threat, it was a daily reality. Nuclear annihilation loomed over every conversation, and the island of Cuba had become a powder keg just 90 miles off the U.S. coast. Fidel Castro's revolution had turned Cuba into a Soviet ally practically overnight. Washington panicked. And in that panic, some of the most disturbing ideas ever committed to paper were born. Declassified in the 1990s under the John F. Kennedy Assassination Records Review Board, Operation Northwoods is perhaps the most damning proof that some conspiracies are real. Drafted by the United States Department of Defense and the Joint Chiefs of Staff in 1962, the operation proposed something that today seems unthinkable: orchestrated terrorist attacks against American citizens on American soil for the sole purpose of galvanizing public support for a war against Cuba. The plan, chilling in its detail, included staging the hijacking of passenger planes, blowing up a U.S. ship in Guantanamo Bay, and even conducting shootings and bombings in American cities, all to be falsely blamed on Cuba. The document suggested that the CIA or other covert agents would create convincing evidence to support the deception. One section proposed staging a fake Cuban attack on a civilian aircraft. The U.S. would substitute a real plane with a drone, release a bogus distress signal mid-flight, and then destroy the drone over the Caribbean. The passengers, allegedly replaced by loyal operatives or removed entirely beforehand. Another part of the plan involved staging funerals for fake victims, even going so far as to fabricate obituaries and grieving families to rally public anger. This wasn't the plot of a dystopian novel. This was a real plan. It had the signatures, the seals, the chain of command. Only one man stood in its way: President John F. Kennedy. Kennedy, already wary of military overreach after the Bay of Pigs fiasco, was reportedly horrified when the plan landed on his desk. He rejected it immediately. Soon after, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Lyman Lemnitzer, was removed from his position. But Operation Northwoods was never prosecuted. No one was held accountable. The plan wasn't revealed until decades later, hidden in the shadows of dusty archives, waiting for someone to notice. So we ask, if one president hadn't said no, what might the headlines of 1962 have looked like? And more importantly, if the U.S. government was willing to consider such a plan in the name of strategic deception, what else might it have done and never told us? It's easy to dismiss conspiracy theories until you read them in the government's own handwriting. And Operation Northwoods, it was no theory. It was a terrifying reality that only narrowly escaped execution. The true horror of the plan isn't just what it proposed, it's that it almost happened, and that we only learned about it more than 30 years later. What else lies buried beneath redactions, locked in file cabinets under concrete and steel? And how many secrets like Northwoods have simply never seen the light? 3. Project Stargate, the CIA's psychic spy program. In a world dominated by science and reason, the idea of psychic spies seems absurd, better suited to pulp novels than Pentagon briefings. And yet, for over 2 decades, the U.S. government quietly invested millions of dollars into something that sounds like science fiction. It was called Project Stargate. The year was 1978. Deep within the bowels of Fort Meade, Maryland, a team of soldiers, scientists, and supposed psychics gathered under the direction of the U.S. Army and the CIA. Their mission? To explore a controversial and mysterious technique known as remote viewing, the ability to psychically see across vast distances, even through walls, using nothing but the human mind. It wasn't a secret weapon created overnight. The origins of Stargate stretched back to earlier experiments under different names: Grill Flame, Sunstreak, Center Lane, each project darker and stranger than the last. But by the late 70s, they had all merged under a single classified umbrella: Stargate. Remote viewers were asked to visualize hidden enemy bases in the Soviet Union, to locate hostages, to describe the interiors of classified facilities, all without ever leaving the room. And shockingly, some of them were accurate. One of the most well-documented examples came from a viewer named Joseph McMoneagle, a retired Army intelligence officer. In one session, McMoneagle was given only the coordinates of a secret Soviet location. From that vague data point alone, he described what appeared to be a massive, domed submarine building facility. Later satellite images confirmed it, right down to the details of a new type of sub under construction. In another experiment, remote viewers were asked to describe the contents of sealed envelopes or distant locations on Earth, and sometimes beyond. In a now infamous session, one viewer even claimed to see structures on Mars, describing ancient ruins and tall beings long before mainstream interest in Martian anomalies. But even within the intelligence community, belief in the project was divided. Skeptics accused the program of cherry-picking data, of relying on lucky guesses or post hoc interpretations. Others believed it was the result of groupthink or even subconscious coaching. And yet it kept going. For over 20 years. From the Cold War through the Gulf War, remote viewing remained a strange and secret tool in the intelligence toolbox, unacknowledged, yet never quite discarded. Because even if only a fraction of the data was useful, that was enough. Eventually, in 1995, Project Stargate was declassified and officially shut down after a review by the American Institutes for Research concluded that remote viewing hadn't yielded actionable intelligence. But even in its final reports, there was an eerie ambiguity. The conclusion wasn't that remote viewing didn't work. It was that its usefulness was unreliable. And here's the twist that many overlook. Just because the official project ended doesn't mean the research did. Former participants continue to train remote viewers today. Some claim the government never truly stopped, but simply moved the program deeper underground. Was it all smoke and mirrors? A Cold War bluff designed to confuse the Soviets? Or did the government, in a moment of desperation, genuinely try to weaponize the untapped powers of the human mind? Either way, the fact remains. For 2 decades, the United States government employed psychics and kept it secret. When science and secrecy collide, reality begins to bend. And in Project Stargate, reality didn't just bend, it vanished, leaving behind only shadows. 4. The Lost Cosmonauts, Ghosts in Earth's Orbit. In the age of space exploration, every triumph is celebrated in front of cameras. Flags planted, astronauts waving, mission control erupting in cheers. But behind the official history of spaceflight lies a darker, quieter story, one whispered across frequencies, hidden in garbled transmissions, and denied for decades. They are known as the Lost Cosmonauts. According to the official record, Yuri Gagarin was the first human in space. On April 12, 1961, he orbited the Earth aboard Vostok 1, returned safely, and became a global icon. The Soviet Union declared victory in the space race's opening chapter, but some believe Gagarin's triumph was not the first attempt, only the first success. Rumors of earlier, failed Soviet spaceflights began to circulate in the West almost immediately. Italian amateur radio operators, Achille and Giovanni Giudica Cordiglia, operating out of a homemade listening station near Turin, claimed they had intercepted disturbing radio transmissions from space as early as 1960, a full year before Gagarin's flight. One of the most chilling recordings, allegedly captured in November 1960, features the weak, labored breathing of a man slowly succumbing to lack of oxygen, his voice echoing through the void as he drifts further from Earth. In another recording, a woman can be heard speaking frantically in Russian, her voice rising in panic as her capsule burns on re-entry. Then, silence. The Soviet Union, of course, denied these incidents. The cosmonauts named in early reports, like Vladimir Ilyushin, were said to be either test pilots who never left Earth or figures invented by the West. But scattered documents, quiet admissions from former insiders, and circumstantial evidence paint a different picture. A 1980s interview with a former Soviet military physician revealed that at least 3 manned spaceflights may have ended in fatal accidents before Gagarin's flight. The cosmonauts? Erased from existence, files sealed, photos destroyed, graves unmarked. The rationale was simple. In the race against the United States, failure could not be shown. The USSR needed the world to believe in its invincibility. But evidence kept slipping through. A classified U.S. Air Force report from the early 1960s mentions unsuccessful manned launches from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. Satellite images revealed the presence of crash sites and unreported launch pads. And in 2008, a former high-ranking Russian engineer admitted that several early cosmonauts had died in missions that were never acknowledged publicly. Why cover it up? Because space wasn't just a frontier, it was a battlefield. Propaganda was the weapon, and perception was everything. A single failed launch, especially a fatal one, could have unraveled Soviet prestige in the fragile years of the Cold War. And so they were buried. Not in the ground, perhaps, but buried in silence. Buried in data scrubbed from radio logs, names omitted from records, and families sworn to secrecy. Lost in the stars. Today, the official history of space exploration is filled with pioneers, astronauts, and heroes. But in the blackness beyond Earth's atmosphere, there may still be voices, long gone but not forgotten. Faint echoes from the early days of spaceflight, when the cost of progress was paid not in glory, but in disappearance. The next time you look up at the night sky, think of the ones we never knew, the ones who reached for the stars and never returned. The government denied they ever existed. But the stars remember. Project Sunshine, the secret harvesting of the dead. There are cover-ups that stir outrage, and there are those that stir fear. But some stories, they stir something even deeper. Something close to horror. This is the chilling case of Project Sunshine, a secret government program in which officials harvested body parts from deceased infants and children, often without parental consent. To understand how something so macabre could occur under the banner of scientific research, we must travel back to the 1950s. The world had just witnessed the destructive power of nuclear weapons, first in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and then in dozens of open-air nuclear tests carried out by the United States, the Soviet Union, and other world powers. But with every atomic blast came a growing concern. What were the long-term effects of radiation on the human body? Specifically, how did radioactive isotopes like strontium-90, a byproduct of nuclear fallout, build up in human tissue, especially in the bones and organs of the young? The U.S. government needed data, precise, intimate biological data. And so they turned to the dead. Project Sunshine, which began in 1953, was spearheaded by the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission in conjunction with other government and military bodies. Its purpose was to measure the effects of nuclear fallout by analyzing human tissue samples. But they weren't just asking for volunteers. Researchers began to secretly collect samples from the corpses of infants and young children around the world, often without informing or seeking permission from the families. Bodies were dissected in secret. Limbs were removed. Organs were extracted and shipped to government laboratories for testing. Entire cadavers disappeared from funeral homes and hospitals. In one particularly disturbing case, a British mother was told her stillborn baby would be taken for routine testing. What she never knew was that her child's legs were removed and sent to the United States for radiation analysis. She wasn't informed until decades later, when declassified documents and independent investigations began to reveal the scope of the operation. When questioned, government officials at the time dismissed the issue, calling it a necessity for national defense. But as more stories came forward, it became clear this was not an isolated incident. It was a systemic, global practice. A 1955 memo between government researchers infamously stated, "We have been forced to start taking the matter of body snatching seriously." Another noted the difficulty of acquiring enough samples, saying, "It is desired to obtain human samples from stillbirths, newborns, and normal children up to age 5. Read that again, it is desired to obtain. Not through donation, not through consent, through quiet removal, through theft of the dead. Over 1,500 samples were taken, many from countries unaware the testing was even occurring. Australia, Canada, the UK, and numerous others were caught up in the global sweep, victims of a program driven by the nuclear arms race and buried under layers of secrecy. When the truth began to surface in the 1990s, over 40 years later, public outrage exploded. Lawsuits were filed, apologies were issued, but for many families, the damage was irreversible. The graves they visited held only silence. The remains of their loved ones had become data points in a classified ledger. What Project Sunshine revealed was that under the veil of national security, ethical boundaries could be ignored, human dignity discarded, and the most vulnerable infants and children used without hesitation. All in the name of science, all in the name of defense. And when the families cried out, the government said nothing. Even today, many of the full details remain classified. Many documents are redacted. Many samples, it is believed, were never returned. So the next time we're told that medical research is transparent or that government experiments are strictly regulated, remember Project Sunshine. And remember this: if they could take from the dead without asking, what might they be willing to take from the living? The Montauk Project, mind control, time travel, and government experiments gone rogue. At the eastern tip of Long Island, New York, stands a decaying military installation, a rusting radar tower, half swallowed by weeds and silence. To the average visitor, it looks abandoned, forgotten. But for those who know the stories, this place is not just a ruin. It is the epicenter of one of the strangest and most controversial government conspiracy theories ever whispered into existence. This is the tale of the Montauk Project, a secret program that allegedly involved psychological warfare, mind control, time travel, and even interdimensional portals, all hidden beneath the surface of a quiet American town. It sounds like science fiction, but what if it was? It begins at Camp Hero, a real military base that was active during World War II, designed to defend New York from German U-boats. It was later used by the U.S. Air Force during the Cold War, housing a massive SAGE radar system capable of detecting incoming aircraft. That's the official history. But according to a growing number of whistleblowers, researchers, and alleged insiders, Camp Hero had another purpose entirely, one that was never documented and never meant to see the light of day. According to these sources, sometime in the late 1970s and early 80s, a secret faction within the U.S. government began conducting classified experiments deep beneath the base. These experiments were said to be a continuation of Project MKUltra, the notorious CIA mind control program that had already been exposed for dosing American citizens with LSD without their consent. But Montauk went further. Much further. One man, Preston Nichols, claimed he had worked on the project, and that the government had been experimenting with psychotronics, a fusion of psychology and electronics. Nichols said they used specially gifted children, Montauk boys, many of whom were abducted or homeless, to test mind control techniques and psychic enhancement. He described procedures where these boys were exposed to extreme trauma to fracture their minds and create programmable alters, essentially mentally compartmentalized slaves. And then came the machines. Nichols claimed the base housed a psychic amplifier, a device so powerful it could take thoughts and manifest them into reality. According to him, one of the most gifted subjects, known only as Duncan Cameron, was able to project entire scenarios, even creatures, into existence. At one point, Nichols said, Duncan conjured a monster, a massive, undefined beast that appeared within the base and wreaked havoc before the systems were shut down. The experiment, they say, was terminated. But the rabbit hole goes deeper. The Montauk project was also said to involve time travel. According to Nichols and other self-proclaimed insiders, the base had developed a temporal portal, something akin to a wormhole, which they used to send people to different points in time, including ancient Egypt and even the distant future. Some accounts even mention connections to the Philadelphia experiment, the supposed 1943 Navy experiment that made the USS Eldridge disappear from radar. The claim is that survivors of the Philadelphia experiment were later brought to Montauk, continuing their involvement in a larger, decades-long program. Of course, critics dismiss these claims as delusions, fabrications, or elaborate science fiction. And yet, when investigators went to Camp Hero after it was decommissioned, they found sealed underground bunkers, concrete doors that led nowhere, and rooms with lead shielding, a necessity only when working with high-level electromagnetic fields or radiation. They found strange drawings on the walls, unexplained symbols, and most bizarre of all, the government officially denied the existence of any underground structures until aerial photography and sonar mapping revealed subterranean chambers. What were they used for? No one knows for sure. Today, Camp Hero is a state park. Tourists walk the grounds, take selfies by the tower, unaware of what may lie beneath their feet. But for those who believe, the experiments never ended. Some say they still hear odd signals on shortwave radios coming from the area. Others claim they've experienced time anomalies, missing time, looping memories, impossible visions. And just a few, swear they were part of it. Victims of Montauk, subjects once used, then discarded. Whether myth or memory, hoax or truth, the Montauk Project taps into our deepest fears. That the government, in pursuit of knowledge or power, may cross ethical boundaries so profound, they unravel the very fabric of reality itself. If it's real, it's the most disturbing experiment in modern history. If it's fake, then someone has gone to unimaginable lengths to hide something that never happened. Or something that did. In the shadows of radar and memory, Montauk still watches, and some believe it still listens. The Denver International Airport Conspiracy, a gateway to the unknown. Airports are meant to be symbols of connection, places where journeys begin and end. But one airport in particular has become the center of a swirling vortex of conspiracy, symbolism, and sinister speculation. Welcome to Denver International Airport, or, as many have come to call it, the strangest airport on Earth. With a massive land area of over 33,000 acres, Denver International is the largest airport in the United States, and by far the most controversial. From the moment it opened in 1995, whispers of secrecy and subterfuge have followed it like a shadow. The airport was delayed by over 16 months, ran $2 billion over budget, and its construction was riddled with confusion. Entire buildings were reportedly constructed and then buried without explanation. To this day, no official documentation has clearly explained why. But it's not just the financial mystery. It's what's inside and underneath. Let's start with what visitors can see. Just outside the entrance looms a 32-foot-tall statue of a rearing blue horse with glowing red eyes, known locally as Blucifer. It's an unsettling sight, and perhaps cursed. During its creation, the sculpture fell and killed its artist, Luis Jimenez, crushing him to death in his studio. Why was such a violent, haunting figure chosen as a gateway monument to Denver's airport? The official answer is symbolism of the American West. But many aren't convinced. Step inside, and the walls offer little comfort. In the main terminal once hung a series of massive murals, painted by artist Leo Tanguma. With imagery so jarring, it sparked worldwide speculation. One mural, titled "Children of the World Dream of Peace," depicts a faceless militaristic figure in a gas mask wielding a sword over a city in flames, while weeping children clutch dead animals. Another shows crying children gathered around a glowing plant growing out of a collapsed building. What were these doing in an international airport? Tanguma claimed the murals represent a journey from darkness to light, a commentary on war and hope. But many researchers believe there's a hidden narrative, a prophecy encoded in color and form. Some say the images foreshadow global catastrophe, engineered war, or biological collapse. Others believe the art reveals the agenda of shadow governments, a dark blueprint etched in public view. And then there's what lies beneath. Numerous sources, including former employees and independent contractors, have claimed the airport sits atop an immense underground network. A massive tunnel system was built during construction, far larger than what commercial airports typically require. Officially, these tunnels were part of a failed automated baggage system, but after the system was abandoned, the tunnels were not filled or demolished. They were sealed, locked off limits. Theories began to take shape. Some believe these tunnels are part of a secret military installation or a continuity of government bunker, a place where elites could retreat in the event of nuclear war or societal collapse. Others suggest they connect to NORAD, located deep within nearby Cheyenne Mountain. But more fantastical theories emerged. That Denver International Airport is the headquarters of the New World Order. Supporters of this idea point to a granite time capsule at the airport's entrance, which contains a plaque displaying the Freemason symbol and a mention of the New World Airport Commission, an organization that, strangely, doesn't appear to exist anywhere else. Coincidence or calling card? And it gets weirder. In 2018, as if responding to the growing conspiracy, the airport launched a cheeky marketing campaign embracing the rumors. Construction signs read, "What are we building? A bunker for the lizard people." And "Are we hiding aliens in the underground tunnels? Only time will tell." Was this mockery or deflection? By laughing at the claims, was the airport trying to disarm them, or subtly confirming the impossible? There have also been anomalous reports, travelers claiming their phones and watches lost time, strange power fluctuations, and unexplained feelings of dread while navigating the terminal alone at night. Still, skeptics say it's all just architectural weirdness and coincidence, a case of pareidolia, seeing meaning where none exists. But the Denver International Airport stands as a modern mystery, a real-world enigma built in plain sight, a place that defies explanation. A symbol, perhaps, of how the most elaborate secrets are sometimes hidden in the open *** where no one thinks to look. Is it a hub of international travel? or a monument to a hidden agenda? A staging ground for the future? Or a tomb for the truth? In the end, the answer lies buried, beneath concrete, tunnels, and the carefully constructed silence of those who built it. Many stories, many mysteries, many times when governments may have held the truth just out of reach. Some are hidden beneath layers of bureaucracy, others beneath dirt, stone, and shadow. But each one asks the same question. What else are they not telling us? Because in a world where information is power, secrecy is the ultimate weapon. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if you want more deep dives into history's strangest secrets. Until next time, stay curious and stay awake.